42 episodes and 9.5 years later, the time has finally come. The Stranger Things finale is here.
Yeah, we jump right in here. We're at the end of the line here, finally. Like you said, 5 seasons now in the books. We just get the finale dropping on New Year's Eve. Just a groundswell of excitement like I haven't seen since maybe like an Avengers Endgame or a Spider-Man No Way Home, really. Like that level of excitement among, just fans of the show that have been on this journey for almost a decade now since it debuted back in 2016. And we're finally here at the end of the line. We know the end of the story. We know how, everything wraps up. They wrapped up everything in about as tight of a bow as they could have to put the end on this. But I gotta say, just looking at the reaction from people online, it is a very mixed bag from the fandom of how they felt about not just the finale, but the final season. And in some cases, like the overall feeling of the trajectory of the entire show. Like it's a very divisive finale. You have people that thought it was absolutely fantastic and spectacular. And you have, much like you do with most things on the internet, like you have people that feel like, it was a huge, complete letdown. And I got to admit, I'm still kind of processing what I saw a couple days ago. What are your initial thoughts on the episode here?
Yeah, I kind of saw some of that feedback and seeing most of it revolves around 11. And, just again, we're going in heavy spoilers. We have to talk about everything here because, we got the 2 hour and 8 minutes with credits. It was probably closer just to straight 2 hours long here. But I was satisfied in the end. There are some problems. There are some issues. And there's a lot to kind of unpack about that open-ended ending in a way that they kind of left 11's fate up to you to decide in a way that they didn't fully commit. And I can see why some fans are upset about that they didn't fully commit one way or the other. Is she dead? Is she trapped? Is she alive? Like, what exactly is going on there? They kind of left it, it's kind of up to your perception and stuff. I think overall they packed a lot into 2 hours. In a way, it felt longer than 2 hours just because of how much they had packed in there. But like I said, there are a few problems and issues. It kind of just goes through, and that's kind of what the whole final season has been. It's hitting those bullet points and it's moving on. It's got to hit those beats and it's got to move on to the next item. But overall, I left it pretty satisfied. But there are problems. Like, there are things that I had issues with. Revolving around 11, revolving around 8, Dr. Kale. That we'll get to kind of our problems in a minute. But, I thought it was fine. I thought it was a good enough finale. It buttoned everything up in a kind of well-rounded way. But I do see why some people are dissatisfied.
Sure, for sure. And I get it. Like, there is a large portion of the fan base that had a severe case of bloodlust for this finale. Like, they were going in and expecting all of these major character deaths. And in a way, depending on your interpretation of the ending, we got a couple of those. Like, you very much have a definitive end to Vecna's story arc in this. And you also have the interpretable ending for 11, but you also have Kali, number 8, who meets a certain fate, like a very specific fate in the show as well. Like, those are kind of like the three main deaths that we wind up with here. And, most of your main cast makes it out pretty much unscathed. And I know a lot of people were really worried. And like I said, there were several people that were bloodlusting, hoping for a bigger massacre that would have come out of this to kind of maybe, hit you harder with that impact at the end that a lot of people were expecting. But I think the overall arc of the show is very, obviously it takes place in the 80s, but it's almost told in like an 80s style anyway, as far as how they tell the story. And if you know anything about main characters in the 80s, they usually make it through the story unscathed. Like, they didn't have a problem doing that. Is it the safe route? Sure. And I can see where a lot of people have a lot of issues with them taking kind of the safer route with our main cast and not really punching us too hard in the gut. But I've said this multiple times in the history of doing this podcast, where I feel so many people try so hard to write the finale in their heads that if it doesn't meet the exact specific thing, that if it doesn't end the way they imagine it ending, their immediate response is to just trash the show or trash everything in the world. I saw some people trying to blasphemously say this was worse than the Game of Thrones ending. Absolutely not.
Nowhere close.
Shame on you people. That was hot. That show ending was hot garbage. This is most definitely not that. And I think the word that I keep coming back to that I agree that you also used in your assessment is it's fine. It's a fine finale. I think in some ways, and we can kind of break it down bit by bit, I think they do move on a little too quickly in some cases, especially here as they wrap this up, that I think looking back at the season as a whole, they could have done a better job of buttoning up as we were going along rather than trying to cram it into this 2-hour finale. Because we had a lot of questions on how things were going to wrap up. That in a lot of ways we got those answers, but we got them very quickly in some cases where it's just wham, bam, move on to the next thing. And didn't spend as much time. Like my biggest gripe, I'll just go ahead and get into it, is the lack of time spent fighting Vecna in the end. Yeah. Like that last battle with Vecna and the Mind Flayer was like, it felt so rushed. Like when they got to it finally, like getting to that battle and just it seeming like it was, I was almost taken aback. Like, oh, this is the entire fight. Like this is it. Like this is how they get it. And I get it. They come together and they, you know, they win and they win as a group kind of thing. But like that felt very rushed. But I could see that being a big stickler for people. And then obviously with, I know we're going to go back and touch on more of these points like in more detail here in a minute, but the aftermath and how long they spent in the aftermath.
Because it's like about 40 minutes.
Almost 40 minutes of the episode was like an epilogue kind of thing, which could have definitely been trimmed down a little bit, I think. There were some really cool moments in the epilogue. I got a little emotional like when it got to the very, very end. But yeah, I mean, I could see some nitpicky things here, a better use of their timing. Like could have gone in their favor a little better, but overall, fine. I'm fine with how they ended things. I really am. I'm kind of at peace with the show, and I'll be interested to see how we feel about the show overall when we get to it too. But like, it definitely didn't hamper my enjoyment of the entire series. I don't think the series is a failure at all.
No. Yeah, and I do agree with the final battle. It felt like the most exciting part was the Mind Flayer battle with them, you know, Nancy being bait and the other kids and the kids in the group, you know, Molotov cocktails and flamethrowers and stabbing it from underneath and stuff. That was fun. The Vecna in, I think you should lightly include Will in that because he didn't really jump in until the very end of it. But Vecna in 11 was mainly, you know, pointing our hands out at each other and throwing each other around. And then, yeah, you kind of get Will step in and then you throw again. It was all kind of throwing. It was a little disappointing because of that there wasn't, I didn't expect a fist fight, but you could have gone something a little bit more entertaining. Like once you got Will in there and Will rips off the arm and, you know, helps slam him into it with 11 was good. And I will give that I love that the final attack, the final death blow to Vecna was Joyce chopping his head off with the axe, because
awesome.
She has been on the sidelines just watching all this horror going down. All the kids are out doing and risking their lives. And then when she, you know, finally finds out, but she's been mostly there watching, and she finally gets to like, all right, you took my son. You've been causing all this havoc and everything to happen for the last 6 years. Well, I guess in that time it's about 4 years because it started in 83. It kind of ends that part in 87. But she gets the final blows, and it's not quick either. She's, you know, she's not an extremely strong person, older woman. She's chopping the head off, but it worked in that part. But I like the Mind Flayer stuff more, but I agree, like it could have been, I mean, you have them showing up in the abyss by climbing the radio tower, which the abyss comes down and breaks some of it, and you get some dramatics. You know, Steve is falling off, and you think that he's going to die, and then Jonathan grabs him, which there's some nice moments between him and Jonathan finally kind of realizing, hey, we don't really like each other, but I'm okay with you, and, you know, this is where everything stands with Nancy. Hey, we're both in the same spot with Nancy and stuff, and you get that, but then it's just like, all right, let's climb in the abyss and go find wherever this is, you know, where we need to find Vecna, because they had no idea what the abyss looked like. They had no idea where they were going or what they were doing. So it felt like they walked a pretty linear path and fell straight into that. And yeah, that final battle took, 5 minutes?
If that,
Yeah, so it that part was a little bit disappointing. Visually looked good. You had Weta Digital, who did the Lord of the Rings. You know how much we love that, and they've done a ton of other stuff. They, were handling all the special effects for that, and it looked really good with the Mind Flayer getting to see its full form and the spider crab demo type of blending there, and it was huge.
Yeah.
But they could have done a little bit more to make that a little bit more interesting. And why is there so many teeth in the chest cavity of the Mind Flayer?
Weird character design for sure. I would be remiss if I didn't, right off the bat, show just the absolute most love for who I feel is the MVP of this finale, and that's Jamie Campbell Bower, who is Henry Vecna. Just absolutely incredible performance from him. Like, he really shines in this. You get a little bit more of the conclusive answers of his initial foray into being under the control of the Mind Flayer to an extent here, and you get kind of what was in the box, a little bit more of a character arc for him, kind of even almost in a light way. You found yourself rooting for him to overcome his fear while he's chasing the kids, almost a little bit, to go through the cave and face his own trauma, and he had his own character arc in there. But man, the way he was emoting with his face and the intensity behind his eyes, and just so many things that he did in this finale were just absolute top notch. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least start by saying he was the absolute MVP of this finale. Unbelievable performance from him in this.
Yeah, he had the most changes to do because he had to have the Henry look and he had to have the Vecna look. And he had to switch in between that all the time of wearing all the prosthetics. And then, of course, they filmed it at different times. But he's had the most on his workload to do when it came to all that, especially then you get into that emotional arc when he finally gets down into that cave and he's dealing with what happened to him as a kid, of what kept him from walking through the caves for so many years, and you get to see why it's tormented him and how it changed him. And they're saying the spinoff that they're planning is going to revolve around the briefcase, what was in the briefcase, and kind of going back. So it's going to be 1950s or something along there, kind of doing the origin of how that rock ended up down there, and he got infected by the Mind Flayer and started everything. Right. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's going to see if everyone wants to really dive back into something in the Stranger Things world, depending on how long it takes too. Right. We know, as we said, 9.5 years to get 5 seasons. It took a while, and as you said, that could be some of the reason why people feel a little disappointed, because you have been on this journey for so long. There's been so long of a wait in between seasons and everything
2.5 years,
that you can feel like, all right, this is, not exactly, as you said, people writing their own endings. Well, they had 2.5 years to debate and talk and think about what that ending might be, and they're going to build up stuff in their mind that's going to let them be disappointed by what they see.
And you got to wonder if it has some outside attributing circumstances to tie to it too. It took 2.5 years, but I think a lot of people forget in that time we had a very major writer strike, production strikes in the entertainment industry that really delayed a lot of things as well, that maybe we could have gotten this a year ago, and who knows what that would have looked like in that instance. But a lot of things like that also go into account, but we can't judge too harshly on that. We just got to come and, deal with the story that we've been presented and kind of analyze how we feel about it. Like you said, it's very divisive, very, very heavy, opinionated. And, I watched it with, alongside a whole bunch of incredible people as well. And everyone was kind of going through different ups and downs and emotions with it. I really love that they at least took the time to kind of explain what happened to almost everyone in the show, right? They kind of went and did their own. A couple of them kind of got next to nothing, I would say. Vicky just kind of, after the first little bit, she kind of disappears and goes away. She was never really a major character, but she had involvement with Robin and things like that. Erica didn't get a ton of love either. Lucas's sister, she didn't get it. But my absolute favorite, and it's just totally random, and it makes so much sense for this character the entire time, was Ted Wheeler. Papa Wheeler just shows up at the graduation at the very end. Alive. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's alive! There he is!" I know, a bunch of us were just like, "Ted, there he is! Thank God they showed him." There was some, definitive answers that he was at least alive and well, for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, we got we got a lot of resolution for a lot of characters at the end, and I don't know if we want to hit on each and every one of them individually, but there was some pretty satisfactory like endings for most of our main characters. Like it seems like we were okay with getting that happy ending for most people here at the end, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, I was satisfied for the most part. I mean, you got Steve, who ends up being a baseball coach for Derek's team and everything, and he's a teacher now, and he's being, having a little bit of a sweet moment of emotion because he's the one of the group that doesn't want to leave Hawkins. He's happy with where he is and where he's going, but he's still, trying to find the wand and get his life. And, Nancy has kind of moved on. She did the college thing, didn't really care for it, so she's working at a paper, so she's going that news reporter, journalist type of route. And yeah, I think you did get a decent amount of wrap up. I mean, you got Robin probably got the least, other than she was the main one leading the exposition of telling you everything goes on because she returns to the radio station and she's kind of telling you about everybody. Oh, it's graduation day. This was going on. I haven't been here in a while. We've moved on. I mean, she's giving that exposition, but you said she got one reference that might have been towards Vicky, that they're still together or something, but you didn't get as much with her, even other than what she said at the radio station. On the rooftop, she was kind of more there to say, hey, we can meet at my weird uncle's house. The halfway I did like the Louisville that got thrown out, even though it's Louisville.
Duffer Brothers.
Got the Louisville got thrown out as a location for them to go to, so we got a little Kentucky reference in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, most of them, I mean, you did have a nice touching moment with Nancy Wheeler coming up to Mike as Mike kind of disappears. He's staring at the spot where 11 disappeared, and he's not really ready to move on. He thinks everyone else is just leaving 11. It's been 18 months. We're jumping around wherever this is kind of leading us. The epilogue, the ending of the series here takes place about 18 months after the final battle happened. So you're seeing that the kids are getting ready to graduate. Older kids have gone off to college and kind of moving on. You have everybody kind of getting into a good place, but Mike is still in that, like, I'm not ready to move on from 11, and I feel like everybody else is. And it was a really nice touching moment between Hopper and him, because Hopper's like, hey, I've been in that. Like, when I lost Sarah, I was in that suffering. I chose that road, and it wasn't good, and it wasn't the right one. So you can either sit there and go the suffering route, or you can figure out a way to move on as 11 would want you to, and everything. It was just a really nice moment between them that allows Hopper to kind of deal with his issues and his closure at the same time helping Mike get his closure as well.
Yeah, Hopper gives like the best speeches in the show. He really does. Like, he had a couple really good speeches in this finale too. But I do like that they at least spent a good chunk of the epilogue with the core group of kids that have like done most of the heavy lifting throughout the show, right? Like your Mike, Will, Dustin, Lucas and Max even here, like towards the end, they get a really sweet, update for them moving forward. It looks like they're going to be happy together, and Mike becoming a writer, Will going off to college, like a lot of really cool like updates for them. I really love the tribute to Eddie that Dustin does at the graduation, where he finds his way to becoming valedictorian of the class and gives an incredible speech, like flips it into like a punk rock speech, that like an Eddie-esque speech, and even says, a couple things in a way that Eddie would say them. And then you get the awesome Iron Maiden song that plays through it. Just top-notch music in the finale as well. Like, music has been synonymous with Stranger Things throughout its entirety, but it really capped off well in the finale too, with some incredible songs. You got Purple Rain even like making an appearance.
Doves Cry, you got Doves Cry. By David Bowie.
You finally get Prince in there. I know a lot of people were waiting for Prince to show up in this too, and you get, just some awesome music too. But man,
it's hard to have an 80s movie without Prince.
You have to. You absolutely have to, and they delivered and they did it right. And just a really cool ending, like for the character-wise for those kids. Like, it was good to see that there. So, like we said, like, not without its fair share of issues, and I think we can kind of nitpick a little here and there if we want to kind of talk about how we feel about some maybe underused characters or some things that we might have, outside of the final battle that we might have taken some umbrage with too.
Yeah, before we really start talking about 11 and that ending and everything with her, one of the issues I had ended up being with the military in season 5 here and stuff. They were clearly just plot points to just kind of, we need some conflict, we need that. It was disappointing because you had Linda Hamilton come in to be Dr. K, and we were wondering, is there going to be a deeper backstory with her, or something else with her when it comes to why is she pushing so hard to restart Papa's program and do all that stuff. But this episode, you know, the finale was a huge disappointment for that, because it was just a military running from one point. All right, well, we think they're over here. We're going to get this group. We're going to go over here. We're going to get this group. We're going to go over here and get this group. And then when you have the final conflict with them where everything went down with 11, they just disappear from the storyline. They just left Hawkins, everything behind, just gone. Poof. Like, it was really disappointing that we didn't have anything else really with Dr. K, and that it just kind of, all right, yeah, I mean, no, the Upside Down is destroyed now, and they don't have 11 to go after, but there still could have been more with the military and everything else. It was just weird just how sharp of a cutoff it was, and how the military was just running around like collecting kids for the final episode.
It felt very Scooby-Doo-esque, like the way they were running around in the, and not in a good way, but like you said, you bring on an actress of the caliber of Linda Hamilton, who, you know, we all love, and obviously, like, you bring Sarah Connor into the mix, and you don't let her be Sarah Connor too much. Like, she gets a couple moments where she's like super intense about things, but like once, like you said, once the resolution with 11 happens, they kind of just go away. Like, well, they think she's gone, so that scraps the program, and they just go away, and you never hear from them again. Like, there's no fallout from that. It was very abrupt, and they probably could have handled that a little better, I think. But because you just, at the end of the day, you just assume that they give up.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you're looking at potentially that this has been going on from the 50s, 40s, because you have to go back to Vecna and Henry's story of how he got affected as a kid, being back in the 1950s. Yeah. That after 4 years of everything that happened here, but they've been going for over 30 years, they just pack up and leave.
Yeah, and that's it. That's in. They're done, and we move on, right? Like, it was very abrupt, and it was very unfortunate. I was kind of hoping, like you said, to have a little bit more time with them, because it felt like they were going to be a bigger piece. But at the end of the day, they weren't that important to the end. You almost could have gotten. It was like they were a vehicle to the end of telling how 11 either doesn't come back at all, or like moves on and survives, depending on which version of this. Because you get the clear, like, story from Mike as they're finishing their last D&D campaign, where this is what I'm choosing to believe happened to 11, and I'm giving you this fantastical possible ending that may or may not be BS. We don't know. Like, and I get where people are upset by that, but like it felt like the military was just there to get us to that point, and then that's their use in the story. Bye-bye, see you later, kind of thing.
I felt 8 was that way too. Callie was that way. That you bring her back after 3 seasons. It was season 2, I believe, that she showed up in. And she was just there to be a vehicle to kind of mess with your mind a little bit. Like, she didn't have much importance other than she was trying to tell 11, like, oh, well, we can't come back. But then you get Mike's story where maybe 8 said that, you know, you should live and we shouldn't do this after that. And you just, you know, she was one of the deaths that we got in here. And I just feel like it was kind of a waste of her character. She hit Vecna once. She hit, like, her and Max, and, you know, 11 get to run around inside of mines for a little bit at the beginning of the episode, but she was very kind of just easily dispatched, because, you know, there's a point that they're going into the lab again in the Upside Down to get into the vat so they can do the walk and do everything through there, but then they have to escape because the military has shown up. And they use the sonic kryptonite, you know, weapon against them. And Hopper makes that choice. I'm going to pick up 11 and we're going to leave. But 11 doesn't want to leave 8. And he goes back and he has his Rambo moment of taking out guards and everything else, but he gets knocked out. And then it's, you know, 2 minutes later that it happens that you kill off 8. And then the next hour and 15 minutes, whatever it was remaining, is kind of just void of that, other than, you know, once we finally dive deep into the ending here, you have potentially one last thing with her, but it just felt like a waste of the character to bring her back, because you do end up having 8 and 11 having that kind of, they've had really hard lives, and you killed both of them potentially off. and it just felt like a waste of the character.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many like wild theories being thrown around by people, and you know, take what you will from that of people having opinions like, was she really on the good side? Was she on the evil side? Is she going to betray 11? Is it her, luring her into a trap to, potentially help Vecna get kind of a one up on her because 11 is the biggest threat to Vecna, like from a power perspective, and that's kind of been the like 11's kind of the Harry Potter and Vecna's the Voldemort here. If you were to draw the parallel, where it seems like one can't live without the other. That's kind of the way they've gone, about things, and it did feel a little bit of a letdown in bringing her back. Like, it just didn't feel like she had this grandiose moment or some kind of big thing with her. And I'll admit that was definitely a little disappointing too, because it felt like it was a little bit of fan service to try to tie up that one loose ribbon of like, where has she been this entire time kind of thing. And this is how we shoehorn her in and kind of integrate her into the story, which is unfortunate because you could have done something probably a little different with her to kind of have her coming back be a little bit more impactful than it was. But this is the story that we got, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I mean, we can still jump around other parts, but I guess we really got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's 11 and her story. So, we do get the conclusion that 11 goes on, which it was also a bit corny, funny way that, they come up to the roof with Murray's celebrating that, oh, you're welcome. I blew up the helicopter that was doing everything without knowing that, 8 had died. And then she looks up and sees rocks, like, you know what, I can jump up to the abyss. Like, why did we do all this stuff? I can just jump up there and I'll be right next to him. Like, how did she... It was just kind of that quick and easy, almost like a video game where you come out of a door and like, oh, there's the staircase to the final boss, and that's what you're going to take and stuff to it. But, she comes up, does get a cool moment where she throws a boulder to hit the mind flayer in the face to kind of stop it from attacking the group and stuff, and then she rips open the chest and jumps in, which is really cool, which also made that final battle with Vecna a little more disappointing and stuff with it. But it's that open-ended ending that has a lot of people talking, and it's going to have us talking here a little bit about it, because I'll let you do your piece on what you feel about it, but I do feel like that was a little bit weaker, because you do have them coming back. Dusty's telling Hopper that we're all good, got all the kids out, 11's with us, everyone's good. And they get in the vehicles, and they're rolling, and they're heading out of the entrance, all happy and everything. And then military, of course, has a trap set for them. So tires are blown, everything has happened. And at this point is where it kind of loses a lot of people. And I'm a little bit in that range, because 11 was within the group. She was there with everybody. And then all of a sudden, when they make it through and the military pop out, she somehow can slip by being the one that they're looking for, to slip back into the Upside Down. Does she jump out somehow before they went through the door, knowing that the military had done something? It was a really odd sequence of how you got her out of the vehicles and back into the Upside Down without anybody, military, the group, anybody knowing she went there, to try to get that surprise moment. Like, oh, she's still in the Upside Down. Like, that could have been handled a lot better.
I think they're just banking on you understanding significantly earlier in the episode where they're trying to get the kids away from Henry. And they kind of, right, wrong, or indifferent, understand the ability to create illusions, right? Like 8's ability to she's kind of like the reality stone, if you want to draw a comparison, where she can kind of alternate what you see, and in that way it kind of gives her some invisibility to where, like, it's very far-fetched, but it's kind of banking on you understanding like that, if you want to tie in the 8 aspect, which ties into Mike's story. And I think they're kind of expecting you to pick up the breadcrumbs there instead of kind of directly telling you with it. And I don't really care for the way that they just incorporated it into Mike's story at the very end of it to kind of explain it.
Is 8 is dead to me. She would have been dead long before, because she died, and then they went to did the final battle, then loaded up and left.
Right.
She would have not been still alive or strong enough to cast an illusion there.
You would think.
Yeah.
But that's where the interpretation, because like you can even make the argument, like when they get to the trap, almost immediately they turn on those weapons that almost incapacitate 11 completely, but she escaped it and went invisible and got away, and then her illusion was projected into the upside down to kind of make you believe she was still there the entire time. It's very far-fetched.
Yeah.
Very. And that's where I get a little nitpicky there, where it's just like, okay, I think you could have done a better job of explaining what was happening rather than just tying it into a potential theoretical story from Mike. Because you do go through the whole story beats of 8 saying goodbye to Mike. Like 8, she's drawing Mike, 11 is drawing Mike into her thoughts here, and they're having that moment there where she's like, I need you to help them understand why I'm making the choice I'm making. Like, I get it. It's supposed to get her to move on knowing that she can't be around them anymore. Like, that was kind of the conclusion that you're supposed to draw from that. I just think story-wise they could have done a better job of tying that all together and laying that out for people. And this is one of those cases where I feel like you don't always have to beat people over the head with it, but you can still make your point. And I don't totally care for how they made the point here of is she or isn't she. I think it could have been a little bit more conclusive rather than tying it up as a hypothetical, because when you do that, when you have Mike telling the story at the end of the D&D game where she's the representative of the mage that comes and saves everybody, which is cute. It was done really well. Like, I like it, but I don't like that it's supposed to be symbolic of what actually happened and you don't have that definitive answer. You know what I mean? Because it does leave it up for debate. I really think they should have put a little bit more of a definitive thing, like Mike knew that she was actually gone, but to save his friends even creates this artificial story of maybe she survived. And we're supposed to be okay that she survived and we don't need to go looking for her because it could potentially put us in trouble again.
Yeah, and I figured that's exactly what they're doing with Mike's story is you don't know what the real answer is to 11 is, did she actually, because Mike's story is that 8 decided to tell 11 that you should live, and she was able to survive long enough to cast that illusion in the upside down to show it looked like 11 had been killed and stayed in the upside down, not able to return, but that she was still able to project her through the upside down out into a trap door in a building inside of that complex. And then she escaped and went off to, like, she found the 3 waterfall place. Now, there was 2 big waterfalls and 1 small one, so you can take that as an interpretation of his story, too, because his dream scenario with 11 was that, hey, we're going to go find a place with this elaborate 3 waterfalls, and we're going to live peaceful, and we're never going to go. And technically, you had 3, but it was more 2, so that also opens up the questions like, all right, does that prove that his story is fake, or does it prove his story is real? Because, they're hard to find a place with 3 waterfalls. She found one with 2, and she's able to go on, and you get that. But to me, I feel 11 is dead. I feel she's either trapped in the upside down, if there's anything to be trapped in, or she died, because to me, 8 would have been dead very long before. Like, we saw her die, and there's always those moments where they pass out and they're able to come back up. She had lost a lot of blood. She had been shot in the gut. She was already kind of weak and everything else, that I don't see how they could have done the projection, the whole sneaking off into a trap door and being able to escape later, because the military would have leveled that place if they were leaving. And I do feel in the end, the importance of it was Mike was showing that he is a writer, and that his way of moving on and the group's way of moving on is, I'm going to tell everybody a story. Max, this is your life. Lucas, this is your life. Dustin, this is your life. Will, this is your life. And then here's my life as a writer, but here's 11's life. She actually didn't die and she moved on. So I do feel it was a story made up to help the grieving process, to help everyone cope and move on, and just to believe that, you know what, I can be okay with, I'm never going to see her again as long as I can believe that she's out there alive. I don't and cannot buy the illusion part of that story. Like that's why I have a problem with that ending. It's like, yeah, if I don't believe that 8 was alive anymore and could do the illusions, then how did 11 get back into the Upside Down to kind of close it. It would have been more interesting if she ran and she dove in as it was exploding and you see her at a last moment, because it's also to the point of the moment of pulling Mike into her mind. That's always been a tub moment. That's always been a moment where she goes and tinks. So she's never been able to kind of do that before. And I don't know if that's just supposed to show her powers can be stronger than she believes or exactly what that was. It was more of, hey, I just need you to help the group. And that ties into the story at the end. You know, Eleven's telling Mike, you have to help the others to be able to move on. Yeah. And that was his way. But I just didn't like that messiness of how she got in. And then you have that story. I'm like, well, no, it doesn't make sense, because 8 was also ground zero for the dark energy. Sure. She was in the building directly underneath it. She would have been one of the first things destroyed in there as well. So there's a huge plot hole around that story where I do have to kind of disconnect it from being the truth that she was able to get out to, like, that's just 100% Mike telling a story to make everybody feel better.
And I've kind of came to the same conclusion myself, kind of watching it. I'm like, this is just him, like, taking her advice and helping everybody, including himself. Like, this is a story that he tells himself that, like, actually that could have happened to her and she's okay. Like, it felt very much like a coping mechanism that he was doing. And to see so many people, like, thinking that that's legitimately what happened to her and she got out and having the same hope, I don't think it is either. And I think, but that's where I kind of lay the fault at the feet of the Duffer Brothers and the people that wrote it. Like, give people that you can have it both ways. Like, you can have her conclusion be definitive, and we know it's definitive, but, like, to help them cope, Mike is presenting them with a possibility like, hey, this is what actually happened to her. This is just more of representative of this character who we can equate to 11 and how she helped us in real time. Like, help everybody move on a little bit and be okay with what happened. Is like, hey, she didn't really make it out, or she didn't really die. She made it out and she's off living her best life without us, kind of thing. And I think they could have done a little bit better job of laying that out for people to kind of come to that same conclusion as well. And that's where a little bit of the sloppiness comes in that we talk about, that it was like, don't get me wrong, fantastic ending, like, with the characters. I love how they completely ended it with it, like, them playing one last game of D&D. You could tell it's the last thing they shot, like, on the series, just because you could see that's not fake emotion coming out of them. That's really genuine. Like, this is the end of 10 years of our lives. Like, getting that emotional ending where they're all in tears. I believe those are genuine tears. I don't believe those are actors' tears, where they're like, this is the last scene we're shooting together and we're all kind of feeling the moment here. And then, you know, like, Mike passing the game on to Holly here, let her and her friends do it, and maybe
having Derek be part of the group.
Derek be a part of the group and everything. It was really cute. Like, I really like them passing the love of D&D on to the next generation of kids to play it and kind of do that. And Holly being the one to take the lead and embracing it. Holly the heroic here, kind of coming through and being the next DM for the group. Like, I love that. And that as an ending to the show, I think was absolutely perfect and perfectly done. Yep. It's some of this other messy stuff that I think really kind of drags it down for a lot of people, which is unfortunate, because I really think the very, very, very end, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like, that last round table with the original kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is very much how we started the show.
That is how we started it.
Is how they ended it. Kind of like the full circle moment before they go on and be adults and go on and live the rest of their lives, knowing that they can't always get together and, you know, play D&D, and this is like the last real D&D game we get to play for a minute. And I just love their interactions there and how they kind of branched off from that and branched out into their own thing. Perfect ending as far as that goes. It's unfortunately several suspect steps to get us to that end, but man, that last part was so emotional and so well done that I'll tip my hat to them for that. That was incredible.
It's one of my favorite moments because you get to see them playing a full campaign as older kids now, and you get Max included because she never really, played with them before. And that's one of my favorite moments is when they think that they've lost and Max gets so mad and she stomps around the room getting angry. Like, that was a great light levity moment before you got into the deeper emotions at the end of, telling the stories, but then putting their binders up on the wall because that's probably the last time they're ever going to touch it because everyone's going to be going different directions and you're going to have
really cool moment.
Holly taking. That was a really cool moment. But yeah, with 11, I get why people are upset because you also have a large amount of people, and I was a bit included with that you want to see 11 and finally get a happy ending. And her happy ending was Mike's story. But is that really a happy ending because she's off on her own again? She doesn't have a friend. She doesn't have her family. In Mike's story, yeah, she found the beautiful place to kind of live and be, but she has to restart her life again. And she has been taken through the ringer her entire life because she was experimented on as a baby, growing up, everything that went on, getting to Hopper, finally starting to have a life with the kids and everybody there. But then, everything that happened every season to her and stuff, you finally wanted her to have that happy moment. I do think Mike's story undercuts the last moment of Hopper and 11 because she says, okay, Hopper is saying, I'm not going to blow it up unless you get out. You have to promise you're getting out. And she's like, hey, I've never really been able to have control, to say what I want to say, to do what I want to do. This is me making a choice that I need to make, that I want to make, that I believe I have to make. And it's her finally taking control of everything, even though it's control to end her life. And I do think that Mike's story kind of does that away, because if she's taking control and then she's sneaking off and not letting anybody know they're alive because she feels like she's protecting, that's at all. I got to protect everybody by going away. It undercuts her making that decision to stay and end it all inside of there through Mike's story. So I do feel Mike's story, even though it's trying to give you a happy ending for 11, it's not really a happy ending because she doesn't have anybody again. She's on her own. But I do think it undercuts other speeches and other things that they talked about before then.
Yeah, and is she actually safe? Like, we're just I get it. It's the 80s. Technology is not what it is now, and your ability to hide is significantly higher then than it is now. But, like, we're just supposed to also expect that she's safe just because she's somewhere else starting her life over again. Like, you can't make that assumption either. Like, is she ever going to never slip up and show her powers again either? I agree. Like, the more you think about it, the more it's like, yeah, she left, but is she really safe? Or is this just a story and we got to leave it as a story, which I'm choosing to believe is the case. She's actually gone, and you're just creating this nice story to kind of make it feel like, okay, she's at peace too, even though she's no longer with us, kind of thing. Like, it did kind of undercut that moment with her and Hopper, which was honestly great scene in the film, like a really good final like moment between the two of them. And you get the wonderful update for Hopper and Joyce, who, have a really funny scene at the restaurant there where they get engaged. And
honestly thought that was going to be Vicky and Robin finally having their dinner
at the thing,
but it turned out to be Hopper. And I need to rewatch that scene to see maybe Vicky and Robin are somewhere in the background and we didn't get to see them. But I really thought that was going to be them getting their date finally. But that would have been 18 months afterwards. It's been a really long time to wait for that date.
Yeah, there's still a really cool moment between Joyce and Hopper, who both could use a little bit of happiness in their lives after all the things that have happened. But yeah, like it's just a solid overall ending to the story. Like, there's definitely some issues with it, but I think where they hit it where it needs to be hit for the characters, I think they did a satisfactory job with the core group of kids that have been kind of the focal point for the entire series, maybe with the exception of 11. But with the rest of the kids, absolute home run as far as wrapping their stories up well. No major deaths among the kids. Like, I'm happy with that outside of 11. Like, I'm good with that, honestly.
Yeah, it felt like past the messiness of how they ended 11, everything else was done pretty well. You got a good progression of the group splitting up again because they have to. You got Hopper and 8 and 11 and Murray. You didn't give an ending really to Murray. You saw him at the graduation stuff, so he's around, still and alive, but you don't have any progression for him. He's always a fun character. He wasn't core main, but he became a big part,
Sure.
of the show and stuff. And I also, did I miss something in episode 7 when they were talking about storming the military base and taking a helicopter to get up there? What happened to the helicopter in that plan? Because wasn't that the plan that episode 7
was the plan. They had to deviate from the plan. They had to deviate from the plan, obviously.
And it deviated very quickly, without even almost recognizing that they deviated from the plan, because it turned into them climbing the radio tower with hopes that the abyss would drop low enough for them to be able to climb up into it. So there's definitely some plot holes that they did in here. But I think when we try to look at the core of it, you're wrapping up the stories for these characters. And like you said, outside of 11, I think they did a solid job of giving everybody a solid ending to it, even though that epilogue was long.
Very long.
Took a long time to get there, the messiness of 11 and stuff. I do think it ended with that final D&D scene outside of Mike's story about 11, that it ended that really well. It was the kind of nice passing of the torch of running past Mike, coming down, starting the D&D and stuff, while he goes up and closes the door, and that's kind of it. I think there's some really great and good moments in here, but there are definitely some missteps that they had.
For sure. And I think most people are going to, for a very good reason, kind of point to the lack of a proper ending for Vecna in that fight. I think the one Game of Thrones allusion to it I could agree with, to a sense, is Vecna has felt very much like the White King. Mm-hmm. You hype this guy up to be the biggest bad, and when it comes time to actually fight him for real at the end, he goes out very quickly and kind of with a whimper, which is kind of what happened with the White Walkers and the White King kind of thing.
Not a grand battle that you expect.
Not the epic battle that most, I would say everyone was expecting, and we didn't get. There were good moments in the battle, but like you said, it was such a short part of the finale that you were kind of hoping for a little bit more meat from that fight to feel a little more heavy and feel a little more important. You could still have those final beats be the final beats, but get a little bit higher stakes in the battle, because it really didn't feel a ton of danger for the main characters even. It could have been a little more of a grandiose battle, and I don't know if there were time and budgetary restrictions on that.
That was a gigantic CG battle.
Kind of make it bigger, but it didn't feel as big as even I was hoping, and that's probably my biggest misstep from that, is to make that battle feel a little heavier and more urgent and more important, that I think could have been done a little bit better. And I would agree that's probably the biggest miss for me, is the buildup of Vecna as this unbelievably difficult character to fight. When you get to the fight wasn't overly that difficult.
We didn't see him really unleash his powers really strongly. We saw him extend his arm out and stuff, but where couldn't he have really burst everything out of his body, tendrils? We also got no demos.
I was going to add to that.
Nowhere. I can get the sense that Vecna never expected them to be able to get to the abyss and get to him directly there, so he didn't have him. But I was expecting, as they're running through that valley, of just an army and waves of demos coming, and they have to find a way to get through it. But past the Mind Flayer looking a bit like a demo, we did not get any.
No, and that was also a big miss, is all of these creatures you've been dealing with for the entire time, your biggest hurdle with them was running through a hospital in episode 7. It really was. And a little bit in the beginning part of the season, and they had no bearing on the finale. Where were they during this fight? Could he not have called upon them while he was fighting? I don't know. That was a little bit of a miss for me too, but we got what we got, and now we have to kind of dissect it from there. But that was probably the biggest miss out of that, is not that the final battle I feel was too easy for them to win, really, to make it feel like all of their efforts were worth them having to they worked together very well, but they never felt like they were in extreme danger in this last fight to where it felt as satisfactory as it could have when they finally won.
And then they also, talking about the group on the outside, Nancy decides she's going to be the bait, and the rest of the group is going to go up on top of the cliffside to attack it, which happens in about 30 seconds worth of time in the show. they're going to have to walk all the way around and climb. That's going to take them a few hours to get up there in reality.
We ain't got the time.
We ain't got the time. They're just going to magically kind of teleport for in about 30 seconds to get up there.
40-minute epilogue, my guy. Like, no, like, the power of television. We're going to get them where they need to be in 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, it does have its flaws and faults. I'm not going to say it's a perfect finale.
No.
It has some really good moments.
It does.
But it does fail in several areas with it. And it's kind of disappointing because they said they've known the ending and they've known a lot of this stuff for 7-8 years. Like, did they not really go back and kind of
hit all the beats
through it a little bit more, change the beats? You know, I know they had to change some things because they got Derek in there and they decided that, I really like the charisma of this kid that we're going to include him. I almost thought Dustin was going to have like a Derek moment, like phrase or something being thrown out in his valedictorian speech and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a solid finale, but it did really have a lot of problems with getting to the end. And yeah, it was disappointing, that final battle, and it was disappointing how they handled 11.
For sure. I mean, to give it like a out of 10 rating, and we don't have to do like our speech like we normally do, but you could have tweaked a few things to make it like a 9 or 10. And I think what we wound up with is a solid like 7.5 finale, which is fine. It's perfectly fine finale. Everybody was expecting a 10 and we didn't get that. So I think that's where a lot of people are feeling let down with some of it, because some of it was so unsatisfactory. But still, I think overall they did a solid enough job where it counts from a character perspective. I think they really nailed it with so many of those endings that I'm a little bit more willing to forgive some of the other things, like the lack of a real grandiose battle to wrap this up. Like, I still feel it's a solid finale, not as great or as epic of one as everyone was hoping for, but I still think they did a solid enough job that 7.5's like fine.
I landed at 7.5 because there are some really good moments and some good final pieces for a lot of these characters of getting a solid ending that you didn't feel like any of them, like Nancy and Jonathan and Steve, had to be in a relationship with each other, something that can be independent and looking for their own things, where, Jonathan is wanting to be a film director and you got Nancy is wanting to do in journalism, while Steve just wants to have a huge family and coach sports.
Six little nuggets.
Be a school teacher and stuff, which him being a school teacher is also a little bit like, I know it's the 80s, but like he wasn't exactly looking to be the best student and the best kid around, and him really quickly becoming a teacher at the high school, even though like he's a coach, but also he was doing sex ed, I believe he was doing with that, which was kind of a good joke about that era of like, if you were coaching a sport for a high school team, they just kind of gave you whatever odd end teaching job to have you be part of the school while you're doing it. It was kind of a joke, but I think 7.5 is solid for it because that final battle was a little weaker because you never felt Vecna fully unleash his power, never fully looking to be that unstoppable force that he's felt to be all the way through the series here.
Especially in season 4.
And that Will and 11 kind of dispatched him a little too quickly with the shish kebabbing and everything that they do to him. Like I said, it was satisfying to have Joyce behead him, but the Mind Flayer and Vecna's battle, it was more Vecna's battle than the Mind Flayer. I thought the Mind Flayer was creepy, that it was fun having that kind of
cool.
80s action kind of montage of flamethrowers and Molotov cocktails and stabbing and shooting and all that stuff, and Nancy giving Mike a flare gun because he wanted to have a weapon, but he's like, Lucas is like, that's a flare gun.
I will say, I shared a GIF when we were watching it of when 11 is making the leap into the Mind Flayer. I shared the same GIF of a very almost identically shot action sequence from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where Drax is leaping up to fight the one with all the giant teeth. It looks almost shot for shot identical. It is so funny. Yeah. It's almost like they were like, that's what we want 11 to do, and it looks almost identical to it. You overlay it with it's very funny. But it just visually for me, it was like, yep, they took inspiration from that, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah. But very, very, very funny moment. But yeah, man, what do you think so far now that we've gotten the entire season? Where would you put season 5 amongst the rankings with the other seasons so far? Because I landed on a very definitive final ranking myself before we got into it, but I'm kind of curious to see what your thoughts on it are.
I don't think I fully laid out what season by season. I would probably still put season. There's something to me about a lot of shows and films and everything about that first one that kicks it off of really getting the mystery and the drama and everything else. I would have season 1 at the top. I'd probably put season 3 or 3 and 4 very close, probably a 2 and 3. I would put 2 probably at the bottom and season 5 right above that. 2 had a lot of problems and issues with that storyline with 11 going off and going through her grunge phase and all that, even though I love the moment of her. I think that was in season 2 of her smashing the rollerblade on the face of the bully. It was either 2 or 3.
That was 3.
But I think 2 and 5 were probably the weaker of them all. I think overall, if I was giving 5 a ranking, I would probably give it like a 7.5 to 8. Somewhere in there. It still had some good moments, but it did have some failures of just exactly how it went through its story. I do want to go back through and kind of watch all of season 5 together so I can see if it flows a little bit better than the broken up style of it is. Because you almost wonder in ways if this, would it be better if they released it episode by episode and you watched it that way, or released it all at once instead of having the 3-part drop with how it did. Like, I think each part had its strength and weaknesses, but I'm curious how it all feels together.
I want to see how well the box office numbers even do for it because of all of the showings in the theaters I got from it. I'm curious to see where it's going to stack up. It may even be, top 2 or 3 at the box office this weekend.
I saw 25 million from the first showing, but that all goes to the theater because Netflix didn't get the rights and things they need properly. All the theaters that are showing it get to keep the proceeds from it.
Beautiful. Love to hear that. Love to see that support money go back to the theaters. But I'm just saying, as far as revenue generated, I'd like to see where it stacks up. Obviously, you've got Avatar in theaters right now, probably still dominating like I would expect it to. But curious to see where that ranked up with it. I kind of landed in a very similar boat as you as far as overall season rankings. My initial reaction was I still think 4 is the absolute peak for me of overall story quality and just an overall well-rounded season. I think 4 is absolutely amazing. I would put 3 at 2, and I would put 1 at 3 as far as like ranking those. And then 5 and 2. I think 5 and 2, like in that order, I would agree with you there. Like, and that's to speak on the overall quality of the show because 5 and 2 aren't bad seasons by any stretch of the imagination. 2 is probably the weakest. Like, truth be told, I almost fell out of watching it during season 2 into season 3, and I'm glad I stuck with it because 3 and 4 wound up being my 2 favorite seasons of the show. So I'm definitely thankful that I stuck with it, but 2 was definitely weaker in quality. Obviously, you have the infamous season 2, episode 7, which is the Kali episode that felt so out of place until they fan serviced her into the end here for us. But like, because it just felt so unnecessary to everything else. She takes this detour to go see this other person, and it was never mentioned again until she shows up here. Yeah. But I think that's my definitive rankings for it. I think 4 was so well done, a complete season, as is 3. 3 is really phenomenal as well. 1, the OG season, just iconic. It's an iconic season because there was nothing really like it at the time when it came out, and it's obviously had the staying power for almost a decade now. Like, it's still huge, pop culture relevant that it is now, and I'm excited to see what the viewership numbers come in, especially for this finale. I want to see how many people want to giving this show a shot to at least watch it at least once. Like, you throw in all the, movie-going experience of it too, along with the Netflix views. I'm excited to see what the viewership for it winds up being because this is one of those tentpole OG of the OG Netflix shows, and it's wrapped up now. Like it's done. We're here at the end. We've gone through the entire series now, not accounting for spinoffs and things, but this is like one of the big tentpole Netflix shows, and it's done. Like you had that wrap up. You had Squid Game wrap up. Like some of these like featured Netflix series are reaching their end, and this is the next one to do it. And what a journey it's been for almost a decade now.
Yeah, so what would you give the series as a whole after thinking about it? I'm landing around an 8.5 to a 9. I want to give it a 9, but season 2 and season 5 kind of dragging it down. I would give it a really solid. It was still a fantastic series that I really loved. It was unique and original, especially like for us and our age. Again, like it all started on my birthday, which kind of made it more fun for me. Is that all right? So he disappeared in November 6, 1983. Hey, that's a special date. And just going through the 80s, but all the 80s references and everything for us. Like, my oldest ended up watching, and she watched the finale with me. She binge watched all the Stranger Things to watch a finale with me. And I'm like, I know she enjoyed it, but I know there's so much more for those who are in the 30s or 40s and stuff who get, or 50s. In that age range, probably 30s being the lowest. It's getting everything because there are so many deep 80s references between film, TV, books, music, like so many different 80s references that I think it probably sits a bit higher up with us who get all those references, and that nostalgia kind of feeds us a little bit with the series. But I still think it was a solid, like I said, 8.5 overall as a series.
I'm giving it a 9 still, because I mean, you have the really, 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 really good to excellent far outweigh some of the struggling issues that they had a little bit more with season 2, and even here with season 5. Like it's had its hits and misses. I still think that the way they rolled it out did not help it as an overall enjoying of the series, breaking it up into 3 parts. I really think that drug it down. I almost think you could have gotten away with maybe even releasing the first 7 episodes together and dropping the finale on its own. Might have been okay.
I still say drop all 8 on November 6th. And that would have been.
Just wanted to land on.
I wanted it to be all out on my birthday.
I know.
Come on,
this is all about you.
But it's that reference to the show that it all started November 6th. So if you really wanted to be poetic, the way to drop it, Netflix is known for the drop everything at once. You could have just dropped every single one of them on November 6th.
You could have, and it would have worked. It could
or
have
the
worked
finale on November 6th. Started a little earlier, maybe around,
Halloween, October.
Do the first, if you want to do that, do the first group on Halloween, because that has a big importance in horror and everything else. Sure. And with the show, had a lot of Halloween elements and stuff into it too, and then drop the finale on November 6th. I think that would have felt maybe a little bit better instead of Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, or was it Christmas Day?
It was Christmas Day.
Christmas Day,
reference to it
when a lot of people are busy, family and everything else, and you do Thanksgiving, again, another very busy holiday. You do Christmas, another very busy holiday. And then you do New Year's, which is typical, another gathering, big. Like, I don't know if they're expecting a lot of people would have throw watch parties on the holidays, but it was just, I don't know, it felt a little strange being on the holidays for the release of it.
Sure, yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I still think, like I said, the overall score of the series, amazing series. It was so good, so well done, such an iconic show. That did it end absolutely perfectly? No, but I still think the good far, far, far away exceeds the bad, and I'm not about to let what wound up being kind of a lesser stellar paced finale ruin my overall experience of the show. Those people saying that it's worse than Game of Thrones, get out of here with that. Miss me with that.
Nowhere close. Like,
y'all are trying to rage. Terrible. Y'all are trying to rage bait people. It's not going to work on me. Get out of here. Miss me with that mess. But still, amazing show overall, and I'm so glad that we've kind of reached the end of it, and it's here, and now we've got it, and it's not going to stop me from going back and rewatching the show again. I know there are several people that have seen the show several times that are absolutely obsessed with it, and I plan on going back and watching it from the beginning again, and that's not something I could say for every show I watch, but this is one I'll definitely go through and eventually find myself binge watching the entire, not binge watching the entire show, but kind of working my way back through the entire series again at some point. Like, definitely going to happen for me.
I started doing that before the final season. I think I got stuck in the middle of season 3 before not being able to finish this. I think I'm going to finish that leading into season 5 to watch that in a bigger cluster. Like, I'm not going to be able to sit down and watch all 8 because of the length of, that's 10 hours, and each one being almost an hour plus 2 hours. It would take a long day to get through it all. But yeah, it's all episodes of Stranger Things are out on Netflix, all 42, 9.5 years, the adventure, the journey that we've gone through with these kids, what the actors and everybody went through to bring us this story. It's finally to a conclusion.
It's finally here, man. Come to our YouTube video. Come to our comment section. Come to our Discord. We're on Discord. Come check us out. Come talk to us about this show, man. We love the engagement that we got for part 2. Love seeing some new faces there. Kind of talk about it and kind of discovering us, for our review of Stranger Things part 2. And, come on this video here, part 3, and let us know what you think about the series as a whole. Where do you rank each season of the show now that it's at a conclusion? We'd love to talk about that with you too. And yeah, man, it's here, it's done, it's over. 10 years, incredible run for a show, and to have the lasting cultural impact that it's had, it's going to be felt for years beyond this as well. Like, it's one of the most successful shows on Netflix for a reason. It's incredibly well done.
You think this finale is going to be discussed and talked about as much as the Lost finale has been debated?
Maybe. I think it'll die down after time. What I really think is the more people sit with it and think about it and go back and give it another look, I think some of that will die down a little bit once, people kind of take it in a little bit. If you go back and watch it again with a clearer mind, kind of take some of the points that we've made here and kind of look at it through a little bit of a different lens, I think you'll be a little more forgiving of the finale possibly, because there was a lot of initial harsh outrage from people.
A lot of raw emotions.
Yeah, sit with it for a little bit, really take the time to think about what you saw and what happened with it, and then go back and give it another shot. We'll see if your opinion on it changed.
And we're not saying that that's going to change all the plot holes and the issues
Sure.
that it did have,
Yeah.
but your understanding of, well, where exactly are we leaving everything here? Because as I went through, I don't believe Mike's story being anything but trying to find closure, of trying to close some way the door of grief and move on and give his friends hope that they can move on and find their way through the grief. That's the biggest thing. Even though I'm not a fan of that story that he told, just because of how it related to everything else that happened before it, it was a heartfelt way of a young kid trying to help his friends deal with the death of a loved one.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a good place to end that, because it's a tough subject anyway, and I think they handled it almost as well as they possibly could have, with the exception of the points that we made when we talked about it here. It's such a hard topic to navigate anyway, but I think they did a fine job of that, and I kind of appreciate how they tried to use the D&D element as an avenue, because it's been such a strong presence and a strong theme for the show throughout its entire run. D&D has been kind of at the core of it, and I love that we kind of got in this incredibly epic series based around a game like that. That's such, even back then, it was such a taboo, nerdy kind of game that is significantly more popular now than it was back then, and just kind of seeing an awesome show based around that with so many D&D themes interwoven throughout the entire story. I love it. I love that they were able to take a subject like that and make an incredible series out of it, and I'm thankful that we've got what we got.
I like to see the effect that Stranger Things has on D&D becoming more popular,
Sure.
and people playing it more, and not being such a hardcore nerd thing, but it's becoming everybody can play it. I mean, you've got celebrities out there that you would not think, like Joe Manganiello and others, they're hardcore D&D guys, and they host big celebrity D&D parties at their house and custom built tables and everything else. It's become a lot less taboo, but I think they did handle it right in the show of just how taboo it was, but also paying a lot of love and tribute to the game that millions have enjoyed, and that seemingly Stranger Things has added to that player base by, I would say, a large margin.
I would say it has a huge impact on making it more normalized to play a game like that. And embrace your inner nerd. Come on, we're all nerdy about something. Just go ahead and lean in, accept it, and embrace it, and life will be so much better.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you feel so inclined, do all the things that help the show out, from follows, shares, likes, and comments on social media to subscribing on YouTube or your favorite audio platform. All of it helps us out so much, and we can't thank you enough for the support as we head into year 3 here.
Yeah, big year ahead for us. We'd also like to announce that you can also become a subscriber over on Patreon to get each episode delivered to you early. We are recording earlier now, moving into 2026, to get an opportunity to get some episodes early out to people on Patreon. You can get exclusive merch items, have your name read out at the end of every episode. Check us out at patreon.com/we'llbringthepopcorn. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support, and we're looking forward to big things in 2026.
But that's it for now. Until next time.